Hey, what is going on, football fans? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to this channel, be sure to subscribe and also hit the thumbs up on this video. Alright, so the college football playoff is over, the Super Bowl is over. Now it's time to turn our attention to the NFL draft. And this is truly one of my favorite times of the year when it comes to sports because you never know what can happen in this draft. Who's going to go where, who's going to get traded, which picks are going to be traded. All sorts of stuff can happen, right? So I thought today, I know that the combine is next week, but I thought today I would do my first edition of my 2024 NFL mock draft. I'm just doing the first round, guys. So, and this draft does not have trades in it. Now, the next mock draft that I do may or may not have trades in it. So, just to keep you guys on alert here. So, without further ado, here is my 2024 first edition of my mock draft. All right, so we'll start off with the Chicago Bears, and so the Bears, the way I see it, they're playing with house money here. They got a quarterback with Justin Fields, and he started to come on as the season came to an end last year. For the second year in a row, the Bears have the number one pick. They originally had it last year before trading it to the Carolina Panthers when they traded up to get Bryce Young. And so now the Bears have the number one pick again. The question is for the Bears is what do you do with this pick? Do you trade the pick and keep Justin Fields, or do you trade Justin Fields and get additional draft capital? Keep in mind the Bears have two top 10 picks this year. So you potentially trade back and get more picks. We'll wait and see what happens. You know, if they decide to move on from Justin Fields, I mean, they don't have to pay him, right? And they can start all over with a quarterback, on a rookie contract. So I think what the Bears do here, all indications seem to think that they are going to move on from Justin Fields, and so they're going to need a quarterback. And the Bears are a team that's starting to come together. They got DJ Moore in that trade last year from the Panthers, and so it would be hard for the Bears to say no to a generational talent. And of course, I'm talking about Caleb Williams, the quarterback from USC, the former Heisman Trophy winner. He's a very talented player, very talented quarterback, and so it would be hard for the Bears to pass up on this pick. Now, there are a lot of teams in this draft that's going to need a quarterback. The Bears is one of them. The Commanders, who's picking at number 2, who I'll talk about here in just a second. Possibly the Steelers, certainly the Broncos, the Vikings, the Giants. And so there's several teams out there that's going to need a quarterback. And if a team desperately wants to, they will trade up and maybe even pay King's ransom to get a player like Caleb Williams. But for right now, I do think that the Bears will stick with the number one pick, and I think they go with Caleb Williams. And speaking of the Commanders, here they are at number 2. And so new head coach with Dan Quinn, new general manager with Adam Peters. And so the last time the Commanders had the number 2 pick, they also had a new head coach. At the time, it was Ron Rivera. And they ended up drafting Chase Young. Unfortunately, things didn't work out like the fan base had hoped to. And it ended up getting traded to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Sam Howell, he had not the best of years, even though I think he was first or second in the league in passing yards. And it's kind of a dilemma here for Washington as well. Do they trade the number 2 pick and get more picks, or do they move on from Sam Howell and draft their quarterback for the future? I think it's the latter. I think they will go with Drake Maye, the quarterback from North Carolina. He's a lot of upside with this guy. He's mobile. He's got a good arm. And so we'll see what happens. But I have Washington going with Drake Maye. All right, so moving on to the Patriots at number 3. This is kind of uncharted territory, so to speak, for New England. So new head coach this year with Jer'Zhan Mayo. No more Bill Belichick after 20-plus years in New England, 6 Super Bowls. But the last couple of years for the Patriots have just not been very good. And Mac Jones, he's been terrible. And so I think they start off with a clean slate, new head coach, new quarterback. And of course, I'm talking about Jayden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from LSU. He's starting to rise on a lot of draft boards. His career at Arizona State before he transferred to LSU, not exactly the best, but when he came to LSU is when he really caught fire, especially last year. That's how he won the Heisman Trophy. And so I think they start with a clean slate here. I think that the Patriots go with Jayden Daniels. All right, so on to Arizona at number 4. This is the first of 2 first-round picks that the Cardinals have this year. It looks like they're going to stick with Kyler Murray at quarterback. Arizona is a team that could possibly take a quarterback and trade up if they need to. But it looks like they're going to stick with Kyler Murray here. And so, but Kyler Murray, he needs a weapon to throw to. The receiving core for Arizona, not exactly the best. And I think easily, this guy's fallen right into their lap. And of course, I'm talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. He's fallen right into your lap. How can you say no to a prospect like this? And a lot of people are saying that, and I agree with them, he's probably the best overall player in this draft class. So we'll see what happens. But I have Arizona going with Marvin Harrison. All right, so we move on to the Chargers. And new head coach Jim Harbaugh has left Michigan to go back to the NFL, playing for the Chargers, a team that he actually played for himself when he was a quarterback in the NFL. And I think this is a great hire for the Chargers. I think the combination with him and Justin Herbert, it's going to be hard to stop. They also hired Greg Roman as their offensive coordinator. And we all know Greg Roman, if you're familiar with the NFL, he loves his tight ends. And this guy, even though he coming off of an injury, another top prospect in this draft, I have the Chargers going with Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. All right, so on to number 6 with the New York Football Giants. So 2 of the last 4 years, the Giants have spent first-round picks on offensive linemen. They drafted Andrew Thomas a few years ago, and then they also drafted Evan Neal. Now, the Giants are in an interesting situation here because, Daniel Jones, I think he has 1 more year on his contract, plus he has an injury history. And the Giants are a team, realistically, I could think that they would move up to get a quarterback, and like I said, along with several other teams. I think what the Giants do here, I don't think they're going to take a quarterback at 6'4". For one thing, guys like Caleb Williams and Drake Maye and Jayden Daniels, the Giants are way too far down to get them unless they trade up. I think they continue to build on that offensive line. It's a possibility they could kick Evan Neal to the inside to play guard. And they go with Joe Alt from Notre Dame, the best offensive lineman, I think, in this draft class. And so I have the Giants going with Joe Alt from Notre Dame. All right, so on to the Titans. They have a new head coach this year. Will Levis done a pretty decent job as a rookie last year, and it looks like he's going to be their franchise QB going forward. But you need to get him some protection. And you couldn't get Joe Alt, but you get the next best lineman prospect out there, and that's Olu Fashanu, the offensive tackle out of Penn State. All right, so we move on to the Falcons. Now, this is an interesting one here because the Falcons, they need a quarterback, okay? Desmond Ridder, he's terrible. They do have Taylor Heineke, who, as a Washington fan, who I like, but not exactly what you would call a franchise QB. And if the Falcons, if they're desperate enough, they'll trade up to get a quarterback as well. Now, of course, we still have free agency pending. I know there's going to be a few quarterbacks out there that is going to be free agents this year. And so, and the Falcons, the way I see it, they're a team that's not that far off. They got the pieces. They got Bijan Robinson. They got Kyle Pitts. They just need a quarterback on that offensive side of the ball. And, this might be a reach to some folks, but I actually have the Falcons going with JJ McCarthy. Yes, I know it could be a reach. I get it, but you need a franchise quarterback. Desmond Ridder, he's clearly not the answer. And JJ McCarthy, he's a very good, accurate quarterback. And so I think the Falcons go with him. All right, so we're back to the Bears again at number 9. So I had them taking Caleb Williams at number 1. And so, you got DJ Moore, who's a very solid receiver. And I think you give Caleb Williams another weapon to throw to. And I had them going with Malik Nabers from LSU. Very, very good wide receiver. It would be hard for the Bears to say no. I have the Bears going with Malik Nabers at number 9. All right, so on to number 10 with the New York Jets. So, of course, the big story last season for the Jets is when they signed Aaron Rodgers. And, of course, we all know how that turned out. He got hurt, tore his Achilles on the first series of his first game. And so, devastating injury, what have you. So, you got to you need a weapon to throw to. I know you got Garrett Wilson, but more importantly, you got to protect your franchise quarterback. And this guy, I think, is very underrated as far as draft prospects, and that is Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State. I think he can make an immediate impact right away. And certainly if you're the Jets, you got to protect your prized quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. All right, so now we come to the Minnesota Vikings at number 11. And this is another team I think that could be looking for a quarterback. Kirk Cousins is set to become a free agent. And there's a good possibility he may not be back. And like I said, there's other free agent quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, he's more than likely gone from the Broncos, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. So, with the 11th pick, I actually have the Vikings going with Terrion Arnold. The Vikings need help in the secondary. They definitely need some help at corner. And Terrion Arnold, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best corner in this draft class. So I have the Vikings going with Terrion Arnold. All right, so we're back to the Broncos now. And the Russell Wilson experiment has failed, and it has failed miserably in Denver. And so it looks like more than likely Russell Wilson, he's gone. Okay, he's not going to be in Denver next year. And a lot of drama surrounds this guy, whatever. I think they start with a clean slate here. And again, a lot of people might think that this is a reach, but with the 12th pick overall, I have the Denver Broncos going with Bo Nix out of Oregon. I think perhaps he could be the most pro-ready quarterback in this draft class. I mean, the guy has 5 years as a starter from his time at Auburn and then again at Oregon. And so I have the Broncos going with Bo Nix. I think they start off with a clean slate at quarterback. And so now we move on to the Raiders. And again, this is another team that could possibly move up to get a quarterback. And, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's terrible. And Aiden O'Connell, as a rookie last year, I think they drafted him in the 4th or 5th round. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he done a decent job, but I'm just not sure if he is, what you would call a franchise QB. So we'll see what the Raiders do here at 13. But, you need a weapon to throw to, regardless of who your quarterback is. And this guy would be hard to say no to. You got to look at the receiving core for the Raiders. You got Devontae Adams. He's getting up there in age. And so we'll see what happens. But I actually have the Raiders going with Rome Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington. Very good catch. Very good catcher, he does a very good job route running, very speedy. So I actually have the Raiders going with Odunze. All right, so we come to the Saints again. So the Saints, again, another team that could be looking at a quarterback. Nearly half of the league could be looking for new quarterbacks this year. They did sign Derek Carr in the offseason after he was released from the Raiders. So we'll see what happens with the Raiders, but I do know that the Raiders love their defensive linemen, especially their edge rushers, but they could use a little help on the interior. And so with that, I have the Saints going with Jer'Zhan Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois. All right, so we come to the Colts at pick number 15. And so, they did they did draft Anthony Richardson at number 4 overall last year, and he got injured, so you can't really tell how things are going to play out there. But one thing you need help on is the defensive side of the ball. You have got to get after the quarterback. That's been a weakness for the Colts in recent memory. And so I think they get a massive upgrade at the edge rusher position. I have them going with Dallas Turner at pick number 15 from Alabama. All right, so we come to the Seahawks now. And, the Seahawks, again, possibly could be looking at a quarterback. Although I will say Geno Smith, he's kind of, well, there is no kind of. He has basically resurrected his career as a quarterback in Seattle. Last couple years has done pretty decent. So I think here, if you're the Seahawks, they got Devin Witherspoon as a corner in last year's draft, and he done pretty well. But you need some help in the trenches up front. You could perhaps kick this guy. I have them going with JC Latham out of Alabama. You could possibly kick him inside to the guard position and try to bolster up that running game and offensive line. Protect your quarterback regardless of who it may be. So I have the Seahawks going with JC Latham out of Alabama. All right, so we come to the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick number 17. Jacksonville barely missed making the playoffs last year. And so I know that had to sting for them, losing in the way they did versus the Titans. So Josh Allen is set to become a free agent. We don't know if he'll be back. I know that the Jacksonville Jaguars, they need help in the secondary. There's no arguing that. But suppose if Josh Allen does come back, well, or if he doesn't come back, you can draft a replacement for him. Or you can put somebody on the other side, add some depth to the edge rusher position. You got Trayvon Walker, who they drafted number 1 a couple of years ago. And so this guy, he's very good. And that's Laiatu Latu from the edge rusher from UCLA. I actually have Jacksonville drafting him at pick number 17. All right, so on to the Bengals. The issue for the Bengals for the last several years has been the offensive line. You got to protect your franchise quarterback, who you signed to a massive contract about a year or two ago with Joe Burrow. You got to protect him. But here's the thing: you need a weapon. You need another weapon for him to throw to. They got Jamar Chase. They still have T. Higgins, but he's set to become a free agent, and he's most likely out the building. And so I think here the Bengals at pick number 18, they draft his replacement, and I think this would be a very good replacement for the Bengals, and that's Keon Coleman from Florida State. All right, so pick number 19 with the Los Angeles Rams. Hard to believe, but this is the first time since 2016 that the Rams have a pick in the first round of the draft. That's hard to believe. All these picks that they've traded over the years, trading picks to get guys like Matthew Stafford and Jalen Ramsey and all that, right? So, the Rams are in an interesting situation here. I think here what they do, they upgraded the edge rusher position. The defensive line, especially with guys like Aaron Donald, tremendous player, but you don't know how much longer he's going to play. He is getting up there in age. But I do think the Rams get some help at the edge rusher position, and this guy is very underrated in my opinion. I have Jared Verse from Florida State going to the Rams at 19. All right, so we come to the Steelers at pick number 20, and Kenny Pickett, not exactly panned out like everyone hoped to. And they could be possibly moving on from him. But regardless of who they go with at quarterback, whether it's possibly Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson, you need help up front on the offensive line. And so with that, I have the Steelers going with Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. All right, so we come to the Dolphins at pick number 21. And Dolphins, made the playoffs last year, had a very good year. We'll see what they do here, but I think here they bolster up that offensive line. And this guy I think he's starting to rise, and people are starting to take notice of this guy. And so I think they get some help on the interior for this offensive line. I have the Dolphins going with Graham Barton out of Duke. All right, so now we come to the Eagles at pick number 22. And, it's you never know what Howie Roseman, the general manager for the Eagles, you never know what he's got up his sleeve. The last 2 years he's taken defensive tackles. He took Jordan Davis in 2022, and then last year he took Jalen Carter. So we all know Howie Roseman. He loves his defensive linemen. I said Josh Sweat. I meant Hassan Reddick. It's a possibility he may not be back next year. We'll see what happens. They could go with an edge rusher, but if you're the Eagles, you have got to fix that secondary. Darius Slay, he's regressed, and then James Bradbury, he's horrible. So you've got to get an upgrade at the corner position. And I think who better than Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo? Very underrated. Not a lot of people know about this guy, but I think once he gets in the NFL, you're going to know about him then. So I have the Eagles going with Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. All right, so now we come to Houston at pick number 23. And this is the pick that they acquired from the Cleveland Browns in the Deshaun Watson trade. What a year for Houston last year. New head coach, new quarterback. C.J. Stroud just played out of his mind last year. But the question for Houston is, can they keep it going? We'll see what happens. You never know what can happen here. But I think you get C.J. Stroud a weapon to throw to, and that's Brian Thomas out of LSU. And I think that would be an instant upgrade to an offense that was already playing very well. And I think it's just going to make them even better. So I have Houston going with Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. All right, so we come to America's team, or at least that's what they say anyway. We come to the Dallas Cowboys. And I think Dallas, they need to rebuild that offensive line. Tyron Smith, he's getting up there in age. Plus, he is going to be a free agent after this season. So I think they start building for the future, and I think they draft his replacement here, and that is Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. Very big, very physical offensive lineman, and I think that's who Dallas will go with at pick number 24. All right, so we come to the Packers, and it looks like Jordan Love, he's here to stay in Green Bay. And so, we'll see how that turns out. But he played very well last year. We saw what he did to the Cowboys in the playoffs last year. And so it's like Aaron Rodgers never left, when it comes to beating Dallas. But anyway, so I think here Green Bay, the Packers, I think that they upgrade the secondary. Darnell Savage is set to become a free agent. He's a safety. I have the Packers going with Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Now, he's somebody that you could possibly kick inside to safety as well, because he, even though he's listed as a corner, Cooper DeJean, he can play both corner and safety. So I think this pick makes a lot of sense for Green Bay at pick 25. All right, so we come to Tampa Bay at pick number 26. And, I was talking about Geno Smith resurrecting his career with the Seahawks. Well, Baker Mayfield has done the same thing in Tampa Bay. It's going to be interesting to see what they do here. Mike Evans is set to become a free agent, or within the next year or two, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so I think here the Buccaneers could go a number of ways. I think here they go with an edge rusher here to upgrade that defense. I have them going with Chop Robinson out of Penn State at pick number 26. All right, so now we're back to Arizona again. This is their second of 2 first-round picks that they have this year at pick 27. And here, I think Arizona gets some help in the secondary. I have them going with Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. They desperately need help on the back end of that defense, and so I think this will be a big upgrade for Arizona at pick 27. All right, so we come to the Buffalo Bills at pick number 28. And, the Bills, they just cannot quite get over the hump. And that hump is the Kansas City Chiefs. It just seems like whenever these two teams meet in the playoffs, the Chiefs come out on top. I think here the Buffalo Bills go with a receiver here. And here's why. Stephon Diggs, there's been talk about him possibly leaving Buffalo or requesting a trade, what have you. And you need some weapons. And when you're going against Patrick Mahomes and all them, you gotta be able to put up points. Yes, you got to be able to stop them as well on the defensive side of the ball. But I think they get a nice replacement here should they move on from Stephon Diggs. I have them going with Adonai Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas, at pick number 28. So now we come to the Lions at pick 29. And what a feel-good story last year with the Lions. I think all of America was rooting for the Lions to make it and possibly win the Super Bowl. But it just wasn't to be. They lost to the Niners in the NFC Championship game. But Dan Campbell has that team going in the right direction. A lot of people question his play call and his decision making, like to go for it on fourth down, what have you. But I like that in a coach, and I like a guy who's willing to roll the dice. Sometimes you might fall flat on your face, but you know what? But what a year for the Lions. They got their. It seems like Jared Goff. He's done pretty well. They got some good receivers, a good running back with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and so you need help on the defensive side of the ball. I know a couple of years ago you drafted Aiden Hutchinson at number 2. But you need to upgrade that secondary. Remember a few years ago they drafted Jeff Okudah. Didn't work out. He ended up getting traded. And so I think here they get a nice little upgrade here, and that is Nate Wiggins from Clemson, cornerback out of Clemson for the Lions. All right, so just like with the Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, it just seems like they cannot get over the hump. And, they signed Lamar Jackson to a massive contract last year. He was the league's MVP this year, but they just could not get past the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. And so I think the Ravens here, they go two different ways. They either draft a receiver, because you look at their receiving core, they do have Zay Flowers, but he's a rookie. You also have Nelson Aguilar as well as Odell Beckham, but both of those guys, especially OBJ, they're both getting up there in age. And so I think the Ravens, they could go with a receiver, but you also, I think, you bolster up that offensive line because Morgan Moses at right tackle, he's getting up there in age as well. Don't know how many more years he'll play. And so I think you get a nice little piece here with Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. Very solid, very physical offensive tackle. I think he would be a great addition to that offensive line for Baltimore. All right, so we come to the Niners, and, what a heartbreaking loss for them in the Super Bowl, losing in overtime to the Kansas City Chiefs once again. And so there's a lot of questions surrounding this Niners team. Brock Purdy, ever since he became the starting quarterback for the Niners a couple of years ago, he's done a pretty good job. They got receivers like Brandon Ayuk as well as Deebo Samuel and, of course, Christian McCaffrey, who they traded for a few years ago from the Carolina Panthers. So what do you do if you're San Francisco? I think you upgrade the secondary. Again, there's a good possibility you could face the Chiefs again in the Super Bowl here pretty soon, and you got to be able to stop these weapons that the Chiefs have, like Kelsey and all these other guys. So we'll see what happens here, but I actually have the Niners going with Kamari Lassiter, the corner out of Georgia. And last but certainly not least, we come to the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. So for the third time in 5 years, the Chiefs are Super Bowl champions. It's been an amazing run for the Chiefs, and we'll see how far they can go. And we all know Patrick Mahomes. He's a tremendous quarterback. There's no arguing that. But a lot of his weapons, specifically Travis Kelsey, he's getting up in there in age. And, they traded Tyreek Hill in the offseason. They traded him to the Miami Dolphins. Kadarius Toney, he's more than likely gone. And so, there's a number of ways I think the Chiefs could go. That defense played tremendously throughout the season and throughout the postseason, and they're a big reason why they won the Super Bowl. I think here they start building for the future. Travis Kelsey, he's probably got maybe 3-4 years maybe left in him, and so I think here you get a pretty pretty good wide receiver here. I have the Chiefs going with Xavier Worthy at pick number 32. And so with that, that concludes my first round mock draft for 2024. This is my first edition of the mock draft. So let me know what you guys think. Who is a prospect that maybe nobody is talking about that could make an immediate impact? We'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you guys next time.